Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of Agoracom in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives about what's going on at their companies. Program note first, though, we love the fact that all of you tune in to watch these videos on Agoracom, on YouTube, and other video sites. But we also recognize the fact that you don't always have the time to sit down and watch video, whether it's on your phone or your laptop or on your tablets. So what we've done is we're now podcasting all of our interviews. That way you can pick up the audio only version, but sometimes that's really convenient. All you got to do to listen is get to your favorite podcast site. For example, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Just search for Agoracom. It's that easy. And now when you're maybe driving to traffic or on a subway, a bus, waiting for a doctor's appointment, or whenever you have some downtime, you can at least plug us into your ears and listen to the show and get all the great information from it. So make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast site. With us today, happy to have him again, Kelvin Burton, Investor Communications over at American Creek Resources. The company trades on the Venture Exchange under the stock symbol AMK, and they've been making a lot of noise in the last half of 2019. For those of you who are new to the story, it's an understatement to say they've got an impressive portfolio of gold properties in BC's prolific Golden Triangle, which most of you know is one of the richest areas of mineralization in the world. So more than just lip service, because American Creek isn't just playing the neighbor game, the neighborhood game. Their flagship Treaty Creek properties joint ventured with Tudor Gold, whose CEO Walter Storm funded Osisko Gold, helped the company become a world-class gold mine, and reached a market capitalization of about $4.5 billion before I think it was sold for $3.5 billion. Mineralization in the Treaty Creek claims lie within the same system that you find for Seabridge Gold, KSM, and the Pretty Brucejack properties that lie immediately south of the Treaty Creek claims. And right now, looks like geology, geophysics are indicating the potential for similar scale deposits. Drilling results in the last half of 2019 are telling that story even stronger. In fact, third-party validation, Eric Sprott came in for 2 private placements, one on August the 8th for $1 million, another on August 12th for $1 million. So here to talk about what's happened after that is Kelvin. Kelvin, welcome back, man.
Hey, thanks so much, George. It's great to be here.
Well, before we get into drill results, because we don't want to dive deep into the geology, let's talk big picture. It sounds like from the company's last press release that you're on to something world-class. And I'm going to quote both Darren Blaney, who's the CEO, who said, Goldstorm is advancing to potentially become a world-class deposit with better logistics than neighboring KSM. And then you've also got Walter himself, because sometimes, hey, what do you expect a CEO to say? Who says Goldstorm now has the attention of several major industry players and is a potential world-class deposit. So you got both principles using world-class in the same press release. Let's talk about that big picture. What do we have here?
Sure thing. Actually, it's an interesting term, world-class, because it's probably a pretty broad term. But what's interesting is that Ken Konkin, the head geologist and director of development for Tudor Gold, our JV partner on Treaty Creek, he told me that world-class at this grade is about 3 million ounces of gold. And we believe we've seen that in the rearview mirror quite a while ago. And so I'm not sure what this is. We sometimes run out of superlatives. We've heard monster system and one of the largest in the Golden Triangle, which actually makes it one of the biggest ones in the world. You'd mentioned on your intro there the fact that we're right next to Seabridge Gold, and Seabridge has the largest undeveloped gold deposit by reserves in the entire world, right? And what the drilling this year has proven out in the program that we have is is the fact that the geophysics and the geology hinted that we might have something similar to or the same kind of scale. Now we're proving it.
And what does it mean that Eric Sprott first said it back in July, but after the last set of drill results, got onto his podcast again, where we stated, kind of like he reemphasized, and I'm going to quote here, hoping they can prove up a 20 million ounce deposit. I know you don't have a number. I know you can't talk about a number specifically, but is he accurate in his range of how big this could be?
That's a great question, and you're right. So there isn't an official resource calculation out just yet, but I think he knows what he's talking about.
Sure.
And there's actually a lot of great indicators around us. We can look at similar deposits that are beside us and their scope and scale, and how big those ones are. What's really significant about this here, George, is that the volume of rock that had been identified last year, and it was called the Goldstorm System. That's one of many potential deposits on Treaty Creek.
Right. That's the one that's being drilled right now actively.
Yeah,
that's the one that's been the subject of all the great news in the last couple of months.
So just the volume of that has increased by multiples this year.
What do you mean by volume, and what kind of multiples?
Okay, sure. So if we actually, this is all public information in Tudor's presentations that they've done. Ken Konkin was just doing a presentation last week over in Zurich, and they do have a great PowerPoint on it that you can look up as well. But this year we've increased the volume or size of the Goldstorm system from about 500 meters to 800 meters going north and south, and from about 300 to 600 meters going east and west. And they're still using about a 700 meter depth. Now, we'll get into it later with drill holes, but we've drilled down over a kilometer now and still have mineralization there. But if you just cut it off at 700, you can take that volume, and there's about 2.8 tons of rock in a cubic meter, so you can just multiply that out. And right now it's looking like we're about a gram per ton in there. And so you can just do the math, see how many grams there are, and divide by 31.1 and see how many ounces there are. The reality is he's definitely in the right area.
I guess that's what Eric's done, right? He's kind of done that kind of math right now.
No, absolutely. And something else really interesting there as well, just in terms of scale here. So in the presentation that Konkin did last week in Zurich there, he mentioned that the Goldstorm actually has the conceptual model for it is about the same size as the Snowfield deposit is. Now, most people don't know about the Snowfield. That's owned by Pretium. So Ken Konkin was the head geologist for Pretium, and he's the one credited for the discovery and development of the Brucejack mine right next door to us, just a few kilometers
which is unbelievable on its own.
Yeah, top 10% grade in the world, actually. So anyway, so when he'd retired, and then he's working for Tudor now, our partner on Treaty Creek, and that's because he believes there's more potential at Treaty Creek than any of the properties there, which is really saying something.
Really? So say that he actually believes got more potential than Pretium.
Yeah, actually more potential than anything in this system right now. So there's something called the Sulphurets hydrothermal system, which is just a big geological trend, and it includes the KSM in it, and it includes Pretium stuff, and then Treaty Creek has the north half. The other two companies have the southern half of it. Treaty Creek has the northern half. And one of the things that Ken developed when he was working in the southern half is a project called the Snowfield, and that's owned by Pretium, and it's literally right beside the Mitchell deposit of the KSM. M is Mitchell. In fact, it's the top half of the Mitchell that was displaced, and that one there actually has measured and indicated resources of about 26 million ounces of gold. And if you include your inferred and indicated resources, then it goes up to about 35 million ounces of gold.
So Ken Konkin, who discovered Pretium's mine and this other system, he's saying that Goldstorm alone could be bigger, potentially be bigger than either of those.
Well, yeah, what he's saying right now is that with the current volume that we have on Goldstorm, it actually is very similar to the Snowfield. Okay, and we know that the Snowfield has depending on how you measure it, 26 million 26 million ounces or 35 million ounces, depending on whether you include all the categories or not. Anyway,
that kind of similar sounds good.
So going back to what Sprott said, is it reasonable or feasible that this could be something in the 20 million ounce? It is, actually. And one of the realities is I've told you this before, and if you want to, we can get into it more, but it honestly looks like we're just scratching the surface of this thing.
I want to go into just some of the drill results, and I always like to avoid drill results because that can get into real boring technical. But I think it's worth discussing the highlights. But before I do, since you brought up, resource calculation, what's there? What is the status of a resource calculation? What can you tell us? Is one coming, or because you don't have one out yet for Goldstorm?
That's a great question. It's one that I'm asked a lot on the phone. And the reality is that, going back to Walter Storm, he was involved in the Malartic mine for Osisko, which is now Canada's largest producing gold mine.
Damn.
And again, you have Ken Konkin, who, again, put the mine in right next door to us. These guys have a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, and a lot of knowledge. And I'm going to leave that to their experience and their knowledge to let the rest of us know when that's going to come out. So I'm sure they have their reasons and their timing for coming out when they do. And I'm perfectly confident that whenever that time is, that it's going to be something very significant.
Given the fact that both of them have found elephants separately, it's kind of hard to ever even question what the logic, what the reason may be as to timing of a resource calculation, so on and so forth. But the good news is that they're already talking about it as something really, really big. Let's go into the drill results. What are some of the highlights? Some of the highlight numbers that give everyone, you guys especially, the excitement that you've got for Goldstorm, which is on Treaty Creek.
Well, sure. It's actually interesting, George. I was looking up on a website called mining.com, and I came across this list of the top 10 drill results from the first half of 2019.
Okay.
And we obviously don't have the second half yet, but and when they were doing the first half, we didn't have our drill results back yet. But when I was looking down them, I actually found something really interesting. Yeah, exactly. So what you see on this image here are what they've done is they've taken the width of the interval and they've times it by the grade, and then you come up with a number. So the one at the very top there is very significant. It's over 1,100 as a number. Then number 2 is just over 1,000. Then number 3 here is about 800. But when you go to number 4, you're actually down into the 300s. And then the last 4 are down in the 200s. And you can see here that I've entered in 3 of our Goldstorm holes here.
In blue. So, those are the blue.
In the blue, exactly. So all of these grades are over 1 gram per ton, 1 gram or over. And so if you look at some of the holes that we did, we would actually have 4th place, 7th place, and 8th place.
Holy moly.
In the top 10. And no, these are from all over the world. This isn't, BC or Canada or that type of thing.
That's saying something.
It really, really is. And it comes back to the fact that this isn't just good locally. This is good as far as world class. Going back to the terms world class. Well, these are actually absolutely fantastic numbers. And one of the keys that Konkin points out is the fact that these are actual gold numbers. They're not gold equivalent numbers. And there is a difference there.
Big difference, because you're not cobbling in copper and this and this and that.
And everything else to come up with something that would be equivalent to.
Right.
Whenever I'm talking about any of these grades it's actually gold numbers. And what's really interesting is that these 3 holes that I put on here, they all come from within something called the 300 zone. And the 300 zone is an area, kind of the top half of the deposit right now, from where we're measuring. And it's in a richer area. So it's enriched as it's close to surface. And that's fantastic as far as mines are concerned.
Yeah, and actually, and I was that leads me into my next question. But before I do, I want to remind everyone
because of what you were saying. Now it makes sense. I'm going to go back to Walter's quote. I'm reading it. The first thing he said in this quote, well, Goldstorm now has the attention of several major industry players. So he's not talking lightly. When you talk about some of the numbers you've been talking about here, comparisons, what Konkin is saying, and then where you would fit into the mining.com top 10 list had your results been out in the first half. And hopefully, I haven't seen this list, but mining.com is going to put out a list for the second half of the year.
Yeah.
Or maybe a full year list, right? Just see where we land. But that's third-party validation. That's the point I want to make.
Yeah, George, let me just add something to that. So that list was 1 gram and above. We had phenomenal deep holes this year, right? Where it's just consistent all the way down. And here's some of the numbers that if we were to include some of our holes that were just under a gram would be. So if you recall, the bottom 4 numbers were in the 200s, and then the next 3 were 300s kind of thing.
Right.
Here's some other holes that we would have had: 612, 638, 578.
So you could potentially dominate that top 10 list.
530. The last hole from last year, 552. And, these are really significant holes. These are going down. Like that last hole from last year was the same height as the CN Tower, within 10 meters.
Unbelievable.
A gram of gold from top to bottom. Then the first hole that we had this year was the same height as the tallest tower in the world over in Dubai, right? And over 800 meters.
So, imagine that full of gold. I'm not saying it's full of gold,
but we have
obviously,
2
but
holes.
that's a golden tower essentially going right down into Goldstorm.
Yeah, we have 2 holes that are that length, and one's about 3/4 of a gram, the other one's about 0.7 gram, and it just keeps going at depth as well. And then we actually even had one this year that went over 1,100 meters, about 0.6 grams per ton gold, and that's actually 2 CN towers on top of each other.
Sometimes this is kind of off topic here for a second, but this is when I would love it if geologists could think about marketing and branding for a second. If they could, name these holes, CN Tower 1, CN Tower 2, Burj, Dubai, the name, I can't remember the exact, because it'd be awesome to put into perspective, right? But you making the case here. Let me talk devil's advocate for a second. There are a lot, some of the world's largest gold deposits are hobbled by factors, right, that make them uneconomic, right? Even KSM, I'm not saying it's uneconomic, so nobody at Seabridge get upset, or Seabridge investors, but they're hobbled by infrastructure and as a result, real big capex, right?
Yes.
That has to be used up in order raised and used up in order to start making money from it. You don't have that problem. What makes Treaty Creek different, and where does it fit in? Where's not just on KSM, but from the biggest deposit in the world?
Sure. It's a good point, because the reality in the mining industry is that the low-hanging fruit's gone, right? So projects are becoming far more remote. They're going into what Konkin calls AK-47 jurisdictions. So, parts of Africa, South America, you can forget about China, Russia, those types of places.
Right.
The grades are getting lower, logistics are getting worse, and all the rest of it. And so it is a real issue, especially when it comes to these mega deposits. So having a lot of ounces is great, but it's not the only consideration, right? So interestingly, I looked up another chart here that actually shows some of these deposits around the world here.
Yep. And again, that'll be on the webcast, so everyone will be looking at it right now.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're looking at this list here, you'll find that most of these are all producing. Only 6 of them aren't actually. And you can see, well, just use an example here. The one at the very top here, Pebble. Most people know about that one. That one's been trying to get into production for kind of decades now.
Yeah.
And again,
a lot of hopes and dreams pinned on that one. Hasn't come through yet.
Well, it's true, and it's even in a safe jurisdiction in terms of being in the United States, right? But they're looking at better part of $5 billion capex. They're looking at building roads and ports and everything, hundreds of kilometers long, and the huge environmental issues and that type of thing. And that's why it's taken so long. If you look at number 4, again, that's KSM, and we can talk about that and more in just a little second. Number 8's not producing. That one's in Mother Russia, which I consider a AK-47 jurisdiction. So I don't know if you want to put your money in there. And then number 14, back in Alaska here with Donlin Creek. And again, about a $7 billion market cap.
Yeah, that's not small
Not
money.
market cap, CapEx, right? To be able to build it.
Of course.
And the environmental issues, which is just kind of starting that process right now. We already talked about Snowfield, and there it is on the list of largest deposits in the entire world. And its issue right now is the fact that it is stuck on the wrong side of the hill, quite literally. It's right beside the Mitchell deposit, and it really kind of has nowhere to go or no way to get out. So logistics are really important, even close to home here.
All right. So let's talk about the logistics on Treaty Creek.
Yeah. Okay. So it's on the right side of the hill. So you already mentioned, the KSM, one of the challenges that they have is logistics. So they have their tailings pond and their processing plant designed on the other side of Treaty Creek because that's where the water flows out through Canada, out to the ocean. And so they actually need to get access through Treaty Creek to get there. That's a whole different topic. But
you're a gatekeeper. You're a gatekeeper to the KSM project at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, that's something that has to be resolved, right, in the near future here. But it certainly adds to the $5.5 billion capex, that they have. So on Treaty Creek, here's the beautiful parts about it. Looking more globally, it's in a very safe jurisdiction, and there's a lot of.
There's a mine operating already just south of there.
Well, actually, yeah, there's one
right
literally
now.
just south of us. There's one's just north and everywhere. There's a lot of good support from the indigenous people there. And in fact, our partner Tudor has actually already signed an agreement there, but very similar to all the other projects that are right around us there. So there's actually good support there. And then on a more local scene, we're on the right side of the mountain. So it's only 20 kilometers away from probably the cheapest power in the world. And the high transmission power lines go right up the highway. We have a highway 20 kilometers away, not 200 kilometers away, through a jungle or through a mountain range, 20 kilometers out to the highway. From there, it's an hour and a half to the shipping port, which has actually 2 ports there, shipping ore already to the Far East. So,
all right. And yeah, that's the beauty about it, right? It's already receiving ore, already shipping ore.
Exactly.
So you're not reinventing the wheel there.
It's just getting out to the highway and bringing the power in. And then, as far as the deposit itself is concerned, you have some really unique things happening. You have it very close to surface. It's just under the surface. And that's why no one knew about this before until we did the magnetotelluric survey a few years back.
But you did say that, you got drill holes as deep as the CN Tower. Is that just shows you the potential? But before that, you can start digging, take ore out, mill it.
Yeah. So normally with close to surface stuff, the beautiful part about that is it lends itself well to an open pit mine, right? And usually you don't have open pit mines the depth of the CN Tower. There actually is one, the Bingham mine down in Utah, and it's actually 1.2 kilometers deep. So it is actually the height of 2 CN Towers in there. Generally, it's a bit less though. But the model up there that looks to be working well in other parts of the world that people are thinking about implementing there is block cave mining underneath of an open pit. But it's enriched right close to the surface. So that improves your strip ratio and it improves your profitability. Open pits, the cheapest.
Yeah, because you're generating cash flow with a very low capex right off the bat.
Yeah, and going back to a point you said earlier about a lot of companies looking at this, it's not just the huge ones that are looking at it because it doesn't have to require a huge company to look at it because the capex is going to be so much lower than some of these other big mega projects that there's, I think, going to be a lot of
players that can get involved.
Exactly. A lot of people can get involved in this. And
right, KSM's $5 billion, there's only a handful of guys that can handle that, but here it opens up the competition. It opens up. I'm assuming it's going to be something that, just like Walter sold Osisko at the end of the day. I'm assuming that's the same. Maybe I shouldn't assume, but
Well,
If it is, it opens up the auction to a lot more players than just the guys who come up with $5 billion.
it does. And I should be clear that the intention is to sell this. Okay. And when I use the term this, I'm talking about the Goldstorm. I'm not talking necessarily about all of Treaty Creek.
Right, because Treaty Creek isn't a one-trick pony at the end of the day, right? Goldstorm is just one
No,
of
no, it's
deposits that you've got on Treaty Creek. So
not.
this is a world-class maker, and then you can sell it, but then you move on to another deposit right beside it.
Exactly. Let me just show you something here. And again, I'm going to hold something up for you to look at. And and this is an image here. Again, this is from Tudor's presentation, and it's showing Seabridge's Kershaw, Fritz Mitchell, and Iron Cap on the left here. And Ken Konkin's calling these a string of pearls, and it's very evenly sequenced. So you have the Kerr deposit about 2.5, maybe 3 kilometers away, Sulphurettes, then that distance again Mitchell, then that distance again Iron Cap. You go 5 kilometers away and you have the Goldstorm, which is marked as GS on this image here, the CB and GS for Copperbell and Goldstorm. And Goldstorm goes off to the right there, farther to the north. So Goldstorm is exactly where it should be if you were looking for another mine. And one of the things—
I love that string of pearls. It's a great visual. It's easily relatable for people at home to kind of imagine what Treaty Creek is going to look like.
Well, exactly. And I just want to explain what this big red blob on there is. In this particular case, that's magnetics that we're looking at, okay? And so there is a huge magnetic anomaly kind of halfway between Goldstorm and the Iron Cap. And that's right where there should be something, right? About every 2.5, 3 kilometers, there's another there's another big deposit.
Right.
And we actually have 2 things happening there. We have not only this huge magnetic anomaly, but we also have the MT anomaly, the magnetotelluric anomaly there as well. So that's one of the things that I think, coming up this year that they might start looking at. Again, those details are up to Tudor.
Yeah, because I want to ask you that. With all this in hand, we don't know if a resource calculation is coming out. That's, I guess, that Walter Storm's holding his cards close to his chest on that.
Yeah.
What's the plan for next year? Because clearly all partners here, especially Ken Konkin, must be eager to jump right back into this in the spring, April or so, and just hit it hard again, I'm presuming?
Yeah, so as far as the details, I'm going to leave that up to Tudor to release,
okay.
and because, things might change or what have you. But I can tell you this, that based on the information that they're going to have for next year, I believe they're going to do a couple of things to try and expand the season dramatically. So this year they drilled for about 3.5 months. Ken's talking about 5 to 6 months of drilling up there. So they're going to expand dramatically this season. They're going to expand dramatically the number of drills that are starting up there. And
because last year you started with one,
started with one, added a second,
and 2. So are you saying possibility of even more drills?
Yes. Yeah. Possibility of 3, 4, that type of thing, starting right from the beginning of the year, kind of a May, and go right through to the end of October. And I can leave the details up to Tudor as far as that's concerned, but considerably more drilling and expanding this area that he has. He's going to get something called a variogram from P&E, which is the company he works with for resource calculations and feasibility studies, that kind of thing. And one of the things that Ken mentioned on the snowfield was that they didn't have the spacing right, and he could have actually drilled the same resource with about half the number of drills. And so that's something that is great to have him there, because he's learned from that. And the P&E is going to give him the numbers from this variogram. And what it'll do is it'll allow him to maximize the distance between and still get an inferred or indicated or measured or whatever it is that he's looking for on there. And of course, this will step out to the north, and this will step out to the east onto the glacier, because we don't know where it ends. We kind of have one corner, I think, of the deposit, the southwest corner. But going north, not only do we not know where it ends, but it's actually getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, that's the insane part. You keep going
Yeah.
north. You keep going deeper.
And the same thing's happening going east. So I think they'll be able to, as I said at the beginning of this year, they had an idea of how big this system was, and they increased that by multiples. There's potential for them to do that again. We just don't know where the end of it is yet.
Yeah,
So
but safe to say, you know, Kelvin tended off. Safe to say that you guys, actually, I don't want to put words in your mouth. On a scale of ecstatic, happy, satisfied, disappointed, now that the year's done, where are you guys at there?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. So you know that markets go up and markets go down, and stock prices do the same and everything else, right? And we've experienced that. We've gone up significantly this year. We've come back a bit, but we just can't wipe the grin off our faces because regardless of what the stock price is right now, we have a very clear understanding of the potential, not only in terms of size, right, but grade. This seems to have, well, actually, it looks like it has much higher gold grades than what the KSM has as well. The logistics are far better. The power's right there, the roads there, everything else that we've already talked about. And so it's really just a question of time and effort and money that they're going to put into it. And that starts just as soon as we can get in there in the spring. So,
and for everyone watching at home, you know, you've heard me say this on Agoracom for years, especially in the small cap world. Third-party validation means a lot, and not that it means that CEOs and IROs would lie about what they've got, but you expect small cap CEOs and IROs to be really optimistic and only think of best case scenario, right? That's their job at the end of the day.
Yes, it is.
That's the responsibility of the shareholder. But what I always look for is third-party validation. So in this case, you've got Walter Storm, who's already sold one company for $3.5 billion. And he's telling us that several major industry players are paying attention to it, and it's a potential world-class deposit. You know, you have to take that at face value, right?
Absolutely.
You've got Eric Sprott, who's telegraphing a couple of times in his podcast this 20 million ounce number. Yeah. First podcast was 10 to 20 million ounces. Second podcast was hoping for 20 million ounces. So he started to lean that way. And he put his money where his mouth is by making 2 separate private placements within just a couple of weeks. And then if that wasn't enough, you've got Ken Konkin, whose reputation is bulletproof and who discovered the operating mine right now. Yeah. South of you. He's credited with the discovery of that. So when you've got, and he's telling, it sounds like from what you're telling me, and I would love to see that PowerPoint. To tell you the truth, I would love to see if we can get Ken Konkin on here to maybe go through that PowerPoint for everybody, but I don't know if that's possible. But if he's going through his PowerPoint in Europe and he's telling people that this has a potential to be bigger than anything in the area, again, he's a professional who's got big wins under his belt. He doesn't need to be talking off the cuff. So if he's saying that, you've got to take that at face value also. So, thanks for summing up. Thanks for adding further context, info, data, and layers onto it.
Sure.
That are really helpful, but it sounds like you guys are in the ecstatic phase, right? You can't wipe the smile off your faces.
Well, we are, and it has to do with a couple of blue sky things as well that I haven't really mentioned to you yet here. And this goes back to this chart here again in terms of the string of pearls that Ken talks about. So, one of the things that he mentioned possibly for this coming year is to maybe even test this area between the Goldstorm and between the Iron Cap, and just start to poke around there a little bit. And then, believe it or not, if you go about another 2.5 kilometers further to the north, there actually are anomalies, geophysical anomalies there, indicating that there could be something there as well. And so he's saying, Goldstorm might be between two big areas, and we also know that there's other zones on there. There's potentially a high-grade VMS deposit called the GR2 zone, and
potentially what you're saying, and we'll end it with this, but potentially what you're saying is Goldstorm looks like it's something really, really great. Looks like it. We don't know yet, but once that's done, you're talking about other potential Goldstorm. So American Creek could be, hitting these pearls for the foreseeable future. Talk about 2, 3, 5. I don't know how 2, 3, 5, 10 years of just next Goldstorm, next Goldstorm, next Goldstorm, all just from Treaty Creek. And Walter Storm would be and would still be the joint venture partner on those.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I should clarify. So, what our joint venture is it's a 20% fully carried interest until production notice is given. Okay, at that point, then we would, put in our 20%. Tuton would put in their 20%, and Tudor would put in their 60%. If we were going to build a mine, right? I believe what we were just talking about here is that each of these deposits would be sold to someone else who would actually put into a mine, right? And so
unbelievable. I can't even start imagining that.
The partnership carries on, and the icing on the cake in this presentation that Konkin gave was that there's these little high-grade veinlets throughout the Goldstorm that he hasn't really quite figured out yet. And he says they actually look like VOK veinlets. So that stands for Valley of the Kings, and that is where he put his mine in, the high-grade mine just south of here. And so he's saying he's seen similar things to that within the system. So is that something separate too, or does it just add value to it, or could it be something that we don't know at this stage? But the blue sky is looking good. We could barely wait to get back in next spring. So.
Even what you have is looking great. Forget about the blue sky. It's almost hard to even imagine the blue sky, but to know that that's there potentially is something special. But I'd love to see how I can't wait. This is a great story. Can't wait to see how Goldstorm plays out as the first chapter of this trilogy.
Yeah.
And thanks so much, Kelvin, for being here. Congratulations to you and the guys, you and Darren, everyone, on what you've accomplished so far. And looking forward to having you back as soon as something breaks.
Great. Well, thanks very much, George. Great to meet with you.
You've been watching Kelvin Burton, Investor Communications over American Creek Resources. The company trades on the Venture Exchange on the stock symbol AMK. And now that you've watched and or heard what Kelvin's had to say, you got to do your due diligence. You can start that by getting to Agoracom, punching the company's name or stock symbol to get to their hub. Watch videos. We've done extensive videos of the company in the second half of the year here. And then feel free to ask questions, because you got Kelvin and Darren who are actually answering questions for you right there on the forum. And then use the link to go over to American Creek's website and do your further due diligence. But based on what you're hearing, it's up to you now. Do your due diligence. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. And for those of you who are listening via Spotify, thanks for tuning in. We hope you made your drive or your doctor room wait or wherever you are that much more fun while you're waiting. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time.